be remarkable, you have to have a growth mindset. The growth mindset means you believe you can learn new things, you can do new things. The flip side of the growth mindset is the grit mindset, because if you're trying new things, if you're pushing the edge, you will fail. And when you fail, you need to keep going. And that's grit, that's perseverance. So if you want to have a growth mindset, be successful, you need to have a grit mindset too.
Welcome to Leadership, the podcast where leadership meets real-world insights. In each episode, you can eavesdrop on exclusive conversations with top thought leaders, best-selling authors, and experts in leadership, communication, relationships, culture, and everything else that shapes your effectiveness in the workplace and in your personal life. Leadership is here for you. Now, here's our host, himself a seasoned coach and best-selling author, Dr. Roger Dean Duncan.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Leadership. If you've been following our podcast, you know that all of our guests are truly remarkable people. They don't just talk about doing exceptional things, they do exceptional things. They are smart, they are curious, they ask a lot of questions, they challenge their own assumptions, they identify important issues and causes, and they are relentless in their pursuit of learning. My guest for this episode certainly fits that profile. A remarkable person himself, Guy Kawasaki is on a mission to make other people remarkable. He grew up in Hawaii, then he attended Stanford University, where he graduated with a degree in psychology because, he says, it was the easiest major he could find. After Stanford, he attended law school for a week. It took him only that long to figure out he didn't care much for the law professors, and besides, he didn't really want to be a lawyer anyway. So he earned an MBA degree at UCLA. Now, fast forward. Today, Guy is chief evangelist at Canva, an Australian software company that provides a graphic design platform with more than 200 million active users. He's also adjunct professor at the University of California, Santa Cruz, where he focuses on entrepreneurship and technology, and he's executive fellow at the UC Berkeley Business School. Meanwhile, he's well known for his amazing success as a venture capitalist. If you're of a certain vintage, you might remember Guy from his early days at Apple, where he played a key role in marketing the iconic Macintosh computer. Guy is the author of 15 mind-stretching books. His latest is titled Think Remarkable: 9 Paths to Transform Your Life and Make a Difference, and he hosts the popular podcast titled Remarkable People. Guy Kawasaki, welcome to Leadership.
Wow, that's quite an introduction. Thank you very much. I hope I can live up to that introduction.
I'm sure you can. Now, Guy, you've had a front row seat to some of the most iconic moments in Silicon Valley. What do you think is the biggest change in the entrepreneurial landscape over the last few decades?
One certainly is that because of things like cloud-based computing and the reduction in price of hardware and stuff, I think it's much cheaper to start a company today. So more people can start companies today. And you know, this concept that you have to have hundreds of millions of dollars and you need to build a factory and all this kind of stuff, that's not true anymore. 2 guys in a garage, 2 gals in a garage can start a company cheaper than ever. That's the good news. The bad news is 2 guys or 2 gals in a garage can start a company much cheaper than ever. So more people are doing it. So there's more competition. So that's one thing. The second thing, of course, is artificial intelligence. And I think artificial intelligence is a bigger deal than the Industrial Revolution. And so that is also a just tsunami of a factor in Silicon Valley. And then I don't know where you are politically, but I think a third factor in Silicon Valley is we seem to be now perverted in that the kind of top priorities are the income tax rate of billionaires and making crypto successful, which I don't know. I mean, that kind of saddens and sickens me at the same time, because this valley was built on the kind of naive and maybe romantic and idealistic concept that technology can make the world a better place, as opposed to make me a richer billionaire.
Yes. Well, in your book, The Art of the Start, you emphasize the importance of creating a mantra instead of a mission statement.
Yes, sir.
How can entrepreneurs identify the right mantra for their business?
Well, first of all, let me give you what I have against a mission statement. I think a mission statement is usually much too long. Employees in a company, I mean, they may read it in the bathroom or they may read it behind the receptionist, but it's always along the lines of, we endeavor to exceed the expectations of our customers while enabling our employees to self-actualize their goals, while enabling our vendors and partners to have a profitable business, while killing as few dolphins as possible. And, it seems like there were 30 people on the exec staff in the room when they made that mission statement, and everybody said, I got to get one word in it. So now there's a 30-word mission statement. So I think a mantra is much better. A mantra should be 2 or 3 words. So this is a big challenge. In 2 or 3 words, can you define your business? And if you look at Apple, I would say it's productivity and creativity. With Canva, it's democratized design, and it's things like that. So, could you go to the receptionist or to a summer intern or that kind of employee of your company and say, what is the mantra of our company? And I would hope that, anybody could say, yep, we're in the business of democratizing design. That's a lot better than saying we're providing a meaningful return for our shareholders and enabling our employees to self-actualize their goals, or exceeding the expectations of our customers and providing a healthy ecosystem for our vendors, because nobody is ever going to remember that. And it's not distinct enough. So if you heard that kind of diatribe, would you say, I can identify the company whose mission statement that is? I don't think so. If you said to people, the mantra of Canva is to democratize design, you would say, that makes sense. I understand why 2 words can define that company.
I can tell you've read some annual reports, and I agree. Some of the mission statements are ridiculous. It's like a bunch of people got around a table, and all of them had a copy of these thesaurus, and they're looking up the biggest words they can find.
Well, that's one method. The other method is you pay McKinsey $5 million.
Right. So and have their people do it for you. Yeah.
So it's like $500,000 a word or something.
Yeah, something like that. So many entrepreneurs struggle with failure, of course. From your perspective, how can entrepreneurs effectively learn from their failure and keep their motivation intact?
Well, this is one of those questions that it's easy for you and I to discuss, but it's hard for the entrepreneur. And believe me, I've failed. And, the last thing I wanted to hear when I failed was, oh, you can learn from this failure. Well, that's easy for you to say. But I think what you said is absolutely true, especially in Silicon Valley. It's not so much that, how many times have you failed? What's important is that you succeed once. And if you succeed once, you can kind of live off your reputation for a very long time, as I have proven. So the key here is to understand that it's a long process. And if you're 20 years old today and you're beginning your career, you should assume that you're going to be working 60, 65 years. So in 60 or 65 years, you got a lot of time to prove yourself. So don't panic if you fail, initially, or even the first 2 or 3 times. It's the long haul. I mean, you could make the case that Steve Jobs got fired from Apple, and he came back and created the most valuable company. So you could make a case if you took the picture at the time that Steve Jobs got fired from Apple, you would say Steve Jobs is a failure. Well, that proved to not be right.
Right. Well, Guy, you've been involved in product launches that have had a huge impact. What is your secret sauce for crafting an effective product launch strategy? And how can smaller startups replicate that kind of success?
Well, I mean, this is kind of a duhism, but it is much easier to have a great product launch of a great product. So,
Yes, for sure.
so for crying out loud, make a great product. So, that's number one, is to create a great product. So the question to that is, how do you create a great product? And I think there's two kind of theories. One theory is you create the product that you yourself want to use. I mean, this is Steve Wozniak creating an Apple I. Steve Wozniak was not driven by marketing and research. Steve Wozniak was driven by the desire to use a computer. So now you could say, well, Steve Jobs created the computer, and thank you, God, that more than one person wanted to use the computer that Steve Wozniak wanted to use. And I would say that's a pretty accurate assessment of Apple. So that's path number one. Path number two is that you work backwards from the customer. So instead of, saying, well, this is what I like to do, this is what I'm good at, that's starting from you. You should start from the customer. And, what does the customer need? And then you provide what the customer needs as opposed to what you like to do. A very good case is like the iPod, right? So the iPod, it had a lot of unique and valuable things going for it. It had a user interface that a mere mortal could use. It had a wide selection of music. You could get the music legally, and you could get the music inexpensively. Those kind of features were unique at the time. So what's unique about your product or service? And then my final tip is, when you're actually in this event or you're meeting with people launching the product, I think a lot of people focus on, look at the end result of what we can do. And I think the showing the what is a mistake. You should show the how. Because to use an example, you could use Canva or Photoshop or 20 other products to create a beautiful graphic, right? So all of us can create beautiful graphics. That's the what. So it's a 20-way tie for a good what. The selling point is the how. So if you took Photoshop, you got this big blank screen, you got 300 tools around it, and you've got to spend a lot of time figuring out how to use Photoshop. On the other hand, with Canva, we have these design types: PowerPoint, infographics, Instagram, Etsy. We got all the typical kind of designs you want to build. And within those design types, we have hundreds of templates. So in the time that it takes you to boot Photoshop, you could finish a design in Canva. So the key to the rollout is how we create a great what, not the fact that we can create a great what, because almost everybody can create a great what. It's how you create the great what.
Now, you were one of the early evangelists for Apple's marketing. What can today's marketers learn from Apple's approach to customer loyalty and brand building?
Well, I would say that, the lesson here is that if you create something truly great, and that should be your goal, you create something truly great, then people will come out of the woodwork because they love what you do, and you don't have to pay them, and they will go out and evangelize your product or service. And evangelism comes from a Greek word meaning bringing the good news. So your product has to be good news. The way Canva and Macintosh became successful is not necessarily because of the marketing and advertising that the companies did. It's because people got Macintoshes and people got Canva, and they loved it. So they told other people to use it, not because they're Apple employees or Canva employees or they were shareholders or anything like that, because an evangelist has the other person's best interest at heart, not just theirs.
I've always loved your use of the word evangelizing. Let me ask you, you've always been a big advocate of evangelizing products and ideas. So what advice do you have for an entrepreneur looking to turn their customers into true brand advocates?
Yeah.
In other words, kind of creating a downline of evangelists.
You're going to think I am stupidly repetitious, but I have to repeat what I said again, which is if you want to have brand advocates and evangelists, you've got to create something great. I mean, it is, that's 90% of evangelism is having something worth evangelizing. And it's easy for me to say, it's very hard to do. Evangelism will not work for mediocrity.
Right. Before we came online, I was talking with my producer about an experience I had years ago. I was coaching this senior executive. He was going to give an important speech. But before we got started and I had the video camera going, I asked him, how did he create those overhead transparencies he was using? You can tell about when this was. And he said, I got this new computer. It's called a Macintosh. And he was very excited in describing how easy the Macintosh was used. I mean, it looked like a Macintosh commercial. He was so animated. And I said, that's great. Sounds interesting. Now, let me hear your speech. And then he switched into his regular persona, and it was deadly boring. Fortunately, I had taped all of it, and I showed him the difference. And I don't think I used the word evangelism, but I told him if he could just talk about his business the way he talked about Apple's business, he was really on to something.
Yeah.
So he was one of those downline evangelists for the Macintosh.
And was his business as exciting as a Macintosh? That's the question.
No, it was not.
Well, what if he's listening to this podcast right now?
Yeah, well, we laughed later, and he agreed maybe he ought to change business.
I don't know if I count that as a success story or a failure story.
Well, it was interesting, at least in terms of how excited he was about the product and how he was able to advocate for it better than he could advocate for his own business.
Hey there, Leadership listeners. We have something special for you. As a thank you for tuning in, we're offering you a free copy of Roger Dean Duncan's award-winning best-selling book, Change-Friendly Leadership. In this book, you'll discover a proven framework for leading change that people will actually buy into, without all the stress and resistance that often stand in the way. You'll also learn powerful strategies to improve relationships both at work and at home, creating a healthier, more productive environment for everyone. To claim your free copy, just head over to changefriendly.com. Don't miss out on this opportunity to transform your good intentions into great performance. Again, grab your free copy of this best-selling book at changefriendly.com.
Guy, you say that mentors are force multipliers.
Yeah.
What are your tips on finding a mentor, or as you call it, a hero, to help with a person's personal growth journey?
Well, first of all, I think many people, when they look for a mentor, they're primarily concerned with bragging rights that they got this famous mentor. And I think that is mistake number one, that, if you're looking for window dressing as a mentor, you're wasting your time and their time.
Right.
So what you want from a mentor is someone who is truly an expert in your area. So, you don't call up Guy Kawasaki and say, will you mentor me about biotech? Because I don't know jack about biotech. And so you have to come up with someone who's very relevant. That's number one. So forget how big the name is. You want to find somebody who's very relevant. Relevancy trumps fame. That's number one. Number two is that when you make a pitch to a mentor, you better show the mentor that you truly understand his or her value. And if this email that you're sending looks like ChatGPT spit it out, you ain't going to get very far. And it's very easy to detect when ChatGPT generated that email because, listen, I have this podcast called Remarkable People, right? And we get 10 pitches a day. And every pitch starts off with something like, I am a fan of your podcast. I just listened to XYZ, and I found it so interesting and so exciting. I want to bring to your attention my own efforts in a similar area. And I'm telling you, much of the time they're saying, oh, I found your, I'll take an extreme example. I found your podcast with this woman gynecologist who was discussing the issues of menstruation and menopause, right? So yeah, I found that very fascinating podcast. And so I looked at that, I listened to that, and I think, oh, my client or my own self would be very relevant. I'm an executive coach who specializes in team building. And I'm saying to myself, so this person listened to a podcast about menstruation and menopause and says, oh, yeah, my client about executive coaching fits right in. Like, how do you figure that? I mean, so, So your pitch has got to be so specific that the person who receives it says, my God, this person really understood what I did, right? So you're looking for a hook that says, so let's say you're pitching someone to be a mentor for an AI company. Then you got to find something in that person's background that's so specific that the person says, wow, this person really did research. This person really figured out that I'm truly relevant. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is do not be afraid of asking. You'd be surprised at how many people are willing to mentor if you show that you really did your homework. But most people don't do the homework. They're casting a wide net and they're just trying to figure out, what fish am I going to drag up in this net?
Right. How is working with a mentor different from assembling a support group or a village, as I think you've called it, to help with a person's growth and development? What's the difference?
Well, I would say a mentor is probably closer to a friend or a spouse or a teacher or a coach than just kind of experts hanging around. And I know that people may find this bizarre, but I truly do believe that something like ChatGPT could be a mentor, because ChatGPT basically has the knowledge of the entire human race in it. And a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Deepak Chopra. So Deepak Chopra is the most metaphysical, like holistic kind of guy you could find. And he believes that AI can be a personal guru. And I was stunned when he said that, because of all people in the world, I did not think that Deepak Chopra would say that ChatGPT can be your personal Deepak Chopra. And so I'm telling you now that, it would be great to get, I don't know, Elon Musk as your mentor. Well, actually, that's not true at all. But anyway, so it might seem great that you get this really famous person to be your mentor. But I'm telling you, if for the true value of what a mentor should do, ChatGPT could probably do a better job. And listen, I have an LLM called Kawasaki GPT. Kawasaki GPT has all my works in it and the transcripts of all my podcasts. And there is no doubt in my mind that if you had Guy personally as a mentor or Kawasaki GPT as a mentor, Kawasaki GPT will do a better job because Kawasaki GPT has a much faster and better recall of knowledge. Kawasaki GPT is available 24/7 by 365. Kawasaki GPT is free. Kawasaki GPT never gets pissed off. It never gets impatient. It never gets bored, all of which I do. So if you wanted to be mentored by Guy, go to Kawasaki GPT.
Well, just let me ask a clarifying question. I'm talking to the real Guy right now, aren't I? I just want to make sure.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, you look good on the screen anyway. Now, you've often stressed the importance of surrounding yourself with the right team. What qualities do you believe every entrepreneur should look for in their co-founders and early employees?
Yeah. So the first thing is you should all be on the same page about what kind of company you want to build, because some people want to build a company that they can quickly flip. Some people want to build a company that's going to last for 100 years. Some people are building a company that they want to keep private. Some people want an IPO. So you need to be on the same page because those kinds of decisions affect you downstream in a very big way. So you need to be on the same page. The second thing is you should always hire people who complement you, not duplicate you. So if you look at the great partnerships, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Wozniak could build it, Steve could sell it. If you didn't have Wozniak, Jobs would have nothing to sell. If you didn't have Jobs, Wozniak couldn't sell the computers he made. So you need someone. Fundamentally, the only two things you need in a company is someone who can make it and someone who could sell it. Everything else after that is easy.
You don't want clones.
You don't want clones, not at all. You should, as a source of pride, if you took your executive staff into a meeting and you looked across the room, you should say to yourself, he does what he does better than me. She does what she does better than me. He does what he does better than me. She does what she does better than me. Everybody in the room can do their job, finance, marketing, operations, legal, whatever. Everybody can do their job better than I can do their job. That should be the test for you.
Sure. Now, grit, you say, is the most important four-letter word in the English language for a person trying to be remarkable. Why is that?
Well, because to be remarkable, you have to have a growth mindset. The growth mindset means you believe you can learn new things, you can do new things, that, it's not a zero-sum game, that the rising tide floats all boats. So if you have the growth mindset, the flip side of the growth mindset is the grit mindset, because if you're trying new things, if you're pushing the edge, you will fail. And when you fail, you need to keep going. And that's grit, that's perseverance. So if you want to have a growth mindset, be successful, you need to have a grit mindset too.
Yes. So in what ways does embracing grace, one of your terms, help a person become remarkable? What's that about?
Well, I think that in life there are basically 3 stages. So in the first stage of your life, you're overworked and underpaid. In the second stage of your life, you're overpaid and underworked. And in the third stage of your life, you figured out it's time to pay back. And that's the stage of life that I'm in. I want to pay back. I've been overpaid and underworked for a while, so I just want to pay back, and that's grace. So grace means you want to pay back society. Grace means that it's not about you anymore. Grace means that you want to help the next generation because you want to be remembered, not the person who gave the biggest building or had the biggest private jet or, had the most crypto, but you are the person who helped make the world the better place.
Sounds great. Now, you quote an historian who said, "The greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge." How can that perspective help people who genuinely want to maximize their potential?
Well, I think the underlying statement there is that you should always have some doubt and some skepticism. And when you are absolutely sure that you're absolutely right, that is the time to be absolutely skeptical. Otherwise, you're just going to go down these blind, dead alleys and dead ends. And that's why it helps to have a mentor, including Kawasaki GPT or Chat GPT, because I think if you put in something to a mentor or an AI model and said, here is my premise, here is my theory, here is my firm belief, poke holes in what I am saying, that is a very good exercise.
Certainly is. Now, if there were ever a business personality that captured the imagination, it was the man you've mentioned 2 or 3 times, Apple co-founder Steve Jobs. You had the opportunity of working closely with him. Tell us, what did you observe in that experience that could be helpful to entrepreneurs and business leaders today? What did you learn from him?
Well, I learned that, first of all, there is a significant number of people who appreciate elegance in design. Now, not everybody does, but there's enough people to appreciate elegance in design that is a very worthy goal. Number 2, I learned that if you can get people to buy into your philosophy, selling them something after that is much easier. But if they don't buy into your philosophy, selling them something is very hard. In the case of Macintosh was about, improving people's creativity and productivity. And the theory was that if you make something easy to use, that more people can access the power and do these great things. If you believe that, then guess what? You got to buy a Macintosh. I mean,
right.
That's the logical conclusion. And the third thing I learned from Steve is that, when you have something great, people will help you. They will help you for the sheer pleasure of helping you, for the sheer pleasure of making the world a better place. Now, I also want to caution you that there are things from Steve Jobs' example that you should not necessarily copy. I think he was maybe too let's say harsh on people. Now, even that is a complex question, because I tell you something, I did some of the best work of my career working for Steve Jobs, and it was literally because of fear. I feared that he would rip me in public,
right,
and embarrass me. And this is not a very popular HR theory, right? There's nobody in an HR department saying, yeah, you know what, you should really scare the employees and they'll do their best work. I've yet to hear that HR theory. But I can tell you something. That's what Steve Jobs did. So that I'm telling you that was the theory, but I'm not telling you that is the best way or the only way. You should even be skeptical about the lessons of Steve Jobs.
Sure.
If you believed in the lessons of Steve Jobs too much, you might be in prison right now, as 2 people have shown.
Yes. Now, your journey has taken you from Apple to venture capital and now as an author, speaker, podcaster. What do you think is the one skill that has been the most important for your success across these different phases of your career?
Oh, by far, it's grit. If you were a writer, people don't understand that, they think that writing, you sit on this windswept beach and then, it's beautiful day and you get out your Mont Blanc fountain pen with the 18-karat nib and you're writing on parchment and the words just flow from your mind onto the page and, bada bing, bada bang, you have a book. They don't understand that writing a book is like opening your vein and pouring your blood out, right?
Right.
And so from the outside looking in, if people really knew what it took to write a book, they'd say, man, why do you do it? But I would say that the only thing worse than writing a book is not writing a book.
Yes. Now, looking back on your career, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self when you first entered the world of entrepreneurship, what would that be? Would it be grit?
It would probably be, don't quit Apple and keep asking for stock options.
Yeah. Well, with hindsight, for sure.
Listen, I quit Apple twice. I turned Steve Jobs down once for a third job. So I don't know, why is anybody listening to me who passed on Apple 3 times?
Well, we've all made some of those errors.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah, but mine is billion-dollar errors.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, for sure. Well, Guy Kawasaki, thank you so much. You've provided our listeners with wise counsel and thought-provoking insights that are priceless. They really are. We so appreciate your contribution to this episode of Leadership. For those of you who'd like to learn more about Guy and his work, go to guykawasaki.com. That's Guy Kawasaki, Kawasaki.com. To grab a free copy of my book, Change Friendly Leadership, go to changefriendly.com. That's changefriendly.com. In other episodes of Leadership, I share my exclusive conversations with top thought leaders who offer smart tips to boost your effectiveness in both your professional and personal life. My guests include superstars like Stephen M.R. Covey, Liz Wiseman, Doug Conant, Dory Clark, Heather Younger, Marshall Goldsmith, Amy Edmondson, Bill George, Jessica Chin, Dana Perino, and many others who have insightful things to say that you can put to good use immediately. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you can stay informed on what's coming your way. Trust me, folks, you don't want to miss any of our episodes. And feel free to leave comments, including any suggestions on future guests. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and spread good cheer wherever you go. For Leadership, I'm Roger Dean Duncan.